Good morning, everyone. Very good morning. Today we are going to start with the new module revision, that is our web applications development. So this is a new module, so you must be aware, you must be present in each and every class, at least some starting classes, so that you can capture what we are doing. So we should wait for another 5 minutes for other class. So let's start with the chapter number 2, that is a web application principle. This is basically a first chapter. This is given as a second. So that is the basics of web application. What does it mean, and what are the various applications that we go. The web application involved from the websites or from the web systems. And the first website is created by the Tim Berners-Lee, that is known as the father of WWW also. While at the CERN, that is the European Laboratory for the Practical Physics, so formed a distributed hypermedia system that enables the researchers to have access to the document. So whatever the document we have, whatever the data we have, so that is the information that is published by the fellow researchers and directly from their computers. So documents are also accessed and also viewed with a piece of software known as a browser. So this is the browser activity that is viewed with the software, with the target, that is also known with the software application that runs on a client machine. Whatever browser we are using or whatever the tool we are using, that is followed up by the researchers, or that is followed up by the fellow researchers, that is directly from their computers, that is directly viewed with a piece of the software. And with the browser, the user can request the documents from other computers on the network and also render these documents on the user display. So whatever the document that they have, whatever the request that they have, so they have to render these documents, they have to render these computers on the network. And to view a document, the user must start the browser and also enter the name of the document and the name of the host computer. Whatever the document we have, whatever the host computer we have, that is, it is found or where it can be found, that is used with the browser, that is used with the name of the host computer. And the browser also sends a request for the document to the host computer, and that is requested, that is handled by the software application known as the web server. That is an application usually run as a service or as a daemon that monitors network activity on a special port, usually port 80. And this is also used, or the browser also sends a specifically formatted request for a document web page to the web server using this network port. Whatever the port, whatever the request we have, so that the web server receives the request, locates the document on its local file system, and also sends it back to the browser. And this web system is also a hypermedia system because the resources in a system are linked to one another. And this also comes from looking at the system as a set of the nodes with interconnecting links, interconnecting criteria, and from one viewpoint it looks like a spider web page that provides a means to navigate the resources of the system. Whatever the resources that they have, they are means to navigate, and most of the links that provided are the basically contact textual document. But the system can be used to distribute video, custom data as well, and there are links that makes the navigation to other documents also, that makes easy to make these documents, that makes or clicks a link in the document, and the browser interprets that as a request to load the reference document or a resource in its place. So whatever the document, whatever the resources that we are using up, so that is used with the result, that is used with the link in the document. And a web browser, web application also builds on and extends a web system to add business functionality. Whatever the functionality we have, whatever the data we have, that is used to add the business functionality. And in simple words, a web application is a web system that allows its users to execute business logic with the web browser. And these web browsers are also a system that provides that uses with the execution of the data, that executes the data, that is very much easier for a logic with the web browser. And that is not a very precise definition, but most of the people have a conception, most of the people have a criteria of the web application that is not the either application, that is or there is a subtle distinction that is also available, that is also used with the browser, that is also used between a web document, web application and the website. And for this purpose, we are using for this book, or we are using the client and the server that makes a connection, that makes a network between each other. So one is a client, then there is a network, then there is a server. Browser, request, document, web server, local file system. It also requests between a web application and a web server. That creates input, that creates navigation through the site and data entry that affects the state of the business, state of the document file that we have chosen. So this affects the state of the business beyond, of course, access the logs and hits the counter. And in essence of this, a web application also uses the system, also uses the website as a front end to business application, front end profile to the business application that gives, that provides with the data entry point, that provides with the state of the business, that provides with the logs, access, and the hit counters. Next is HTTP, that is a hypertext protocol. So browsers and the web servers uses a special protocol known as the HTTP that allows. So when I talk about this diagram, that diagram shows how they communicate, how they interact with each other, how they deal with each other, we can say. How client communicate with the server, and the server how provide the services to the client. Yeah. So client, then network, then server, then browser, request, document, local file system. And for this purpose, a web application also develops, also uses the system that makes how effective it is, how comfortable it is, go from the data entry point for the system logs and hit the counter. So browser and the web server also uses a special protocol known as the HTTP, which specifies how a browser should format and send a request to the web server. And the client browser also sends a request to the that consists of the lines of the character terminated by the CR or LF. CR is carriage return and LF is line feed. And a well-behaved server will not require the carriage return character that will be provided with the get space and the location of the document relative to the root of the web server file system. That get will be used, that space will be used, and the location of the document relative to the roots will be used with the file system. And whenever a web server site is configured, it is usually set up to use a particular directory on that host machine local systems. Why? Because it is using as a website's root directory, and they are also found relative to this directory because they are using with the carriage return, they are using with the line field pair. And a well-behaved get server, well-behaved local computer that is used. So they provide the services, they use with the services. Now, in this case, browser request to the web server. Look up the arrow. Browser request to the web server. Web server locates or connected with the local file system, locates in the local file system. Then it sends back the document. No. After fetching from the local file system here, whatever the file, for example, there is a file ABCD that is fetched from the file system or the local file system, we can say the database in simple terms. So whenever we use the local file system that is used with the scenarios, that is used with the content, so local file system is also connected and that is used with the local file that must be converted, that must be going as a document to the browser. So whatever the document that is coming up, this will be go with the browser and this will be sent with the document as a browser. So one is a request to the web server, one is a document to the browser. So one is providing the request to the web server, one is providing the document to the web browser. So this arrow is used for the request and this arrow is used for the document. So there are two parts over here. And when we talk about HTTP, that is a hypertext transfer protocol, that uses a special protocol that is used with the URL also that consists of the word get, space and the location of the document. So whenever a web server or the site is configured, it is usually set up to use a particular directory on the host machine local system, local file, as well as the website root directory. And they're also found directed to the directory. For example, when we say there is a URL, that is a uniform resource locator that is used for obtaining, referencing the document. So URL is a unique address, uniform resource locator as the name advice. It is a unique address that is used for the identification, that is used for referencing and obtaining the document. That identifies the protocol, that identifies the host machine name, optional port number, and the document name or location. And a URL is a single word with no white spaces. And any further words found on the request line are either ignored or treated according to the full HTTP specification. So whatever the specification, whatever the request that is used for making the ignored or either treated as a full HTTP specification. There are two parts over here. One is the URL, one is the HTTP. URL is the uniform resource locator and HTTP is the protocol that makes the host machine, that makes the port number, document type, location with a single words. Now, when we say about the URL, that is a uniform resource locator. So this starts with the HTTP or the HTTPS. So HTTP, that colon, then double slash, then there is the name of the site www.google.com. So this URL is a way to specify an object, resource, or a network. And this is like when we say about this one, so this is the line that is under mark over here. This is a way to specify how to make the object. We can say that it is a unique resource locator, but full form that is specified is a uniform resource locator. Uniform and unique are the same thing basically. Yes. So it is like a network equivalent for specifying a file name or a file system, and this can be used to request many kinds of or many types of objects with different protocols. For example, when we use HTTP, so there is a common network protocol, internet protocol that includes Newsview, FTP, Gopher, and the file. And each protocol is specific to the type of information or the resource it presents. It presents the resources, it presents the protocol, it presents the information that it presents. And whenever HTTP is specified, so whatever the object that is specified as a web page. And this also requests a web page from host, such as for example, this is occupied by the www.waeuml.org. So this is a site or this is the host, that is the website that is available over here. Now this will be converted into the URL. This is the URL. It starts with the HTTP, then double slash double colon www.waeuml.org space prospect wd k3043 and .html. And this document name is a k43.html that is located near the directory or in the directory as a spec wt. This is relative to the website's root directory on the web server. And this more explicit reference to this page should include the port number. However, whatever the port number that we have, whatever the data we have, so the default port number for the HTTP is 80. That is already assumed for the HTTP request. So whatever the request we have, whatever the data we have, that is used with the HTTP request, that is used with the 80. And it is also possible to configure the web services, a web server to listen to a port other than the 80, and this is done often to create a private website. So some web browsers monitors an additional port for it uses for the web configuration that allows the webmasters, those who are responsible for managing the web server, so that is used or web server and the website, to remotely manage a web server configuration with just a server. So whatever the configuration we have, whatever the data we have, that is used with the configuration, that is used with the configuration of the browser, we can say. This type of configuration tool is an example of the small web application. So whatever the domain name, whatever the textual information name that is used to look up for an internet or numeric internet address, this addressing is used today in the IP, that is the IP, the Internet Protocol. So whenever it is used as an IP, whenever it is used as an ICT, this also request that is made available to the host computer. This means that the host name identified in the URL must be resolved into a numeric IP address. And this process is done with the domain name server, DNS. It is a network computer that the client has access to, and that has a known IP address. So there is a known IP address, known domain name that have access, that have provided the IP address. And the network infrastructure software on the client knows how to request the IP address from a DNS for a given domain name. So whatever the domain name, whatever the criteria we have, so that is requested for the IP address. And this DNS is also used for converting IP address into the domain name and domain name into the IP address. Now, hostname is also made up of the two distinct parts. The rightmost dot is in the name is used to separate the hostname from its top level domain, that is the TLD, in this case com, and the way UML part is the subdomain that provides the domain network, often refers to the combination of the top level domain and the subdomain. There are two parts, one is the top level domain, one is the subdomain, that is the internal part. In this case, the domain is the weuml.org and it is a name that is I own. As the owner of the domain name, I am responsible for ensuring that an IP address is associated with the domain. So reserving a domain name and not using it to specify or host a website or application, that is referred to as a parking a domain name with the expectation that a real host will soon respond meaningfully to this domain. And when I requested or when I registered that domain name, I used one of the official registrars delegated the authority to assign the domain name, that is what is the domain name, how it is used. And in order to reserve a domain, I have to give domain name criteria, whatever the domain name that they have, so that is used. And the domain criteria that is used to preserve alignment and give authority to assign the domain. In order to give priority, in order to reserve a domain, I have to provide the expectation that is given. So as an owner, the IP address is also associated with the domain, and reserving a domain name and not using it to the host, our website or application, that is also marked as a, or that is also given as a meaningful data to the domain name that is given. So this is domain name is weuml.org and it is a name that I own. Yeah. So the IP address is also used with the two DNS. Now let's talk about the DNS or the IP address that is used in this case with the multi-level domains, multi-level variations. So in my case, I created the records in the DNS to equate WEE or test mail or organization to the specific IP address of any host computer. www and testpairs are third level domains, and their usage is up to the discretion of the host owner. So whatever the convention it is using, so that is used for the www or HTML websites, FTP for the web server, NTP for the Usenet news servers, and so on. Although this should not be confused with the protocol specification or a part of the URL. So whatever the specification that they have, so whatever the documentation, whatever the protocol that they have, so they have to make the protocol with the specification of the URL that is discussed. And the third level domain name also serve as a convenience to the host machine admin and also not a part of the domain name ownership process. Now do they impact the types of protocols that they are used. Whatever the protocol that they are used, whatever the data we are using, they have to make the impact types of the protocol that are used over here. Any host can conceive the request for multiple domains. So whatever the domain that they have, that have to use the HTTP request for resource to a server, and the client application also typically includes a full URL that was also used to resolve IP address. Server, which is a single IP address, also receive a request and look at the URL to determine which application or the separate website should handle the request. This is how many internet service providers, that is the ISPs, can also offer the basic hosting capabilities to the customers with custom domain names on the shared machines. So that will be used to the portal application, and the request is for this one and this one to do a simple test HTML website for the test.wauml.org. And two types of top level domains are also generic and the country specific. Additional one, that is the .rpa, is also dedicated to the internet infrastructure. Recently, the list of the generic top-level domains are also expanded. However, when you say about .com, .edu, .net, .org, that also continues to the one most of us recognize. So most of us recognize for this data also, in fact also that is used for recognizing or that continues for the recognize. And each domain is intended for a particular type of use. For example, .com domain for commercial business, .net for internet service providers, ORG for the non-profit organization, EDU for the education institution. And a country-specific domains are also managed by the organizations in individual computers, countries, and can also define the usage of the second-level domain in any way that they want. Anyway, they want the UK, the top-level domain of the United Kingdom, that defines the number of the second-level domain, that is the .co, .uk, .me.uk, .org, .uk, .plc, and .uk. And this will be expected out within the expected users that will be used, and that will be domain or that will be specific with the individual organization that can claim ownership. And the TLDs that are managed by a single level authority, Internet Corporation for the assigned names, number, ICAN, with a distribution of the internet numbers managed by the Internet Assigned Number Authority, that is the IAN. And in a wide variety of the equations that work with the registrar, a company responsible for selling the domains, or an ISP rather than work directly with the organizations. So whenever we manage the ICAN, whenever we manage the United Kingdom, that defines a number of the seconds like the .co.uk, .me.uk, org.uk, plc.uk, ltd.uk. So these domains are with us with a third level domain that is specified that individual organizations can also claim. With this organization, with this work, we also work as a registrar, a company responsible for selling the domains, or an ISP rather than the work directly with these organizations. That may be a faulty tolerant, that may be a URL, that may be related to the URL. and the informed resource locator that puts some superclass to the URL and not the URLs. This is simply an identifier of a resource. So whatever the domain, whatever the URL we have, that is also making an access mechanism, that is the name of the host computer, host server. So this remains globally the unique and also persistent even when the resource ceases to exist or become unavailable. So for all the practical purposes, we as a web application developer are interested mostly in the URL, since it is these identifier that we use to connect to our web pages to form our system. So whatever the data we have, whatever the URL we have, that is used to make the identifier that is used to connect our web pages to form our system.